Chapter 9, the extension of the senses. Seeing. We have been accused of having eyes and seeing not, and ears and hearing not, and have been told that the wisdom of man is foolishness in the eyes of God, indicating that nothing we are gaining from our present use of the senses is aught but foolishness in the eyes of this power called God. We are invited to be absent from the body and present with the Lord, and to listen to the still small voice instead of the audible voice of man. We are told to flee from man whose breath is in his nostrils, and yet, with these foreshortened senses, man has attempted to demonstrate a truth which apparently is entirely outside of these limitations. We have constant invitations to come up higher and references as to what takes place if I be lifted up. And we are told of the extension of vision when the eye becomes single. Seeing that all the works of Jesus were not done in the supposed fashion of metaphysics, as used in its present day interpretation of the word, that is, using a God power to change something which seemed impossible of change, and for the purpose of producing miracles, we are only faintly beginning to see the necessity of the extension of the senses. The law of Jesus Christ is one of fulfillment and not of destruction. And so the use of the senses as we know them today is not destroyed or put aside, but rather absorbed in the immensity of the whole. You must decrease, I must increase, carries with it the idea of breaking down a wall or limitation and thereby increasing that which already is, or extending it, as at the pushing out of the walls of a room, the air, which formerly held the shape and limitations of the four walls called room, now finds itself lost in an infinity of its own self. All that was true of the air contained in the room remains forever true, but the limitations of the room make it impossible to judge by this small amount of air the true and infinite quality of the whole body of air. If, therefore, a person were setting down as a fact what he found to be true of the air in the room, his judgment about air as a whole would be faulty and absolutely untrue. So must the world we live in be, viewed through the foreshortened senses. Jesus apparently knew this as his true nature, for he asks with impunity those things which are entirely outside of the possibilities of the finding of the human senses. When he calls Peter, "Come to me," he is telling him to do something that cannot be done through the foreshortened senses and understanding of the ordinary man. When he says, "Look again," explaining that the fields are white with harvest and the labourers are few, he is speaking of something which is outside the sense of sight, as recognised by the average man. The reason such gross failures have come forth from the schools of demonstrating the truth is because it all has been done on the plane of the impossible. Back of every one of them is the idea that by taking thought or making affirmations or meditating on God, they can, or will eventually, cause God to do their bidding, and whatever takes place will be unnatural. Many will deny this, but if it were not unnatural, they would not make a practice of rehearsing it for the rest of their natural lives. and testimonies would not be told, enlarged upon, and finally printed about this unnatural, natural thing which had happened to them because they treated. We find Jesus very naturally coming to the conclusion that Jesus could do nothing with the limited false sense of life gathered through the foreshortened senses. I can of myself do nothing, but I can do all things. Moving into the naturalness of the presence immediately put him in the plane of the natural functioning of the presence. The miracles to man were the natural functioning of the law to the man of extended senses, or one who had pushed out the walls of the personal into the impersonal. You shall find your life when you lose it, is the paradoxical teaching of the presence. Only when you begin to understand that the look again is not a straining of the muscles of the eyes, or an exalted or emotional state of the consciousness, nor yet a vivid imagination, can you begin to see the fields are white and that the harvest, which you distinctly did not plant, is ripe. The command thrust in the sickle is one of the most futile, and yet it persists and must finally be obeyed, else you remain a lifelong gleaner to a miserly harvester. Awake, thou that sleepest, and Christ shall give thee light. No light can come through the foreshortened senses. Sifting through the wisdom of man is like looking through the husks for a few grains of wheat that the swine have left. Ye have eyes and see not. Does the statement intrigue you? Does it hold you in its everlasting grasp? Do you ask, see what? Eyes have not seen and ears have not heard, neither hath it entered into the heart of man the things that are prepared for those who love the Lord. The things that are to be seen and which we are not seeing through the glass darkly of the foreshortened senses are the things which already have been prepared. This takes us into an entirely different classification from those who think they can and do create things by taking thought, or that they make things happen because they treat. The things that are to be seen with the blind eyes already are prepared. It is an entirely different premise from which to work. We at no time are concerned with that angle of it. When you are told to look again, that look does not in any way create the fields white with harvest. The sonship degree is constantly concerned with making things happen that would not otherwise happen, but the son has his limitations and eventually must function into the fatherhood degree, where the finished mystery is revealed. The moment the prodigal rises to go to the fatherhood degree, it, seeing him a long way off, comes toward him with the robe, ring, fatted calf, etc. So when man begins to leave the level of making demonstrations, which come and go constantly, and very often leave embarrassing gaps between, the fatherhood consciousness moves figuratively towards him. Jesus was not concerned with the creating of things. He constantly was seen touching the next dimension or the presence, where that which appeared to the three-dimensional mind a miracle was a natural, ever-moving thing. At this height he had but to give thanks or recognition, and the vacuum caused by beliefs in the mind of an individual or a group as to the absence of God in one form or another, was instantly filled. It was not a running of unformed substance into a matrix or mould, but a becoming aware of the presence which broke down the limitations of the thing called problem or room, and a joining of the one with the whole. The room then was no more, and yet its invisible dimensions might still remain. Or, for want of a better idea, we say the hard, solid walls of granite were suddenly made of the most open of screen wire. The individuality of it is still retained, but it is one with the universal whole. I and my Father are one. My Father is greater than I. Just as the air of the universe is greater than the air taking the shape of the screened-in room. Yet are the two one. The temperature, density, movement, etc. would be the same, and the air in the room could take all of the qualities and powers of the air surrounding it. All illustrations are inadequate and stupid when it comes to bringing out the relation of God and man, soul and body. But they give us a faint inkling of the truth as taught by Jesus the Christ. No wonder then that Jesus, realizing the limitations of the senses, first invited man to take his attention away from appearances and asked him to judge righteous judgment. Certainly he could not find the righteous judgment in the appearances of things created out of the limited concept of life. Through the limited senses, man could see only what his consciousness was capable of seeing. Hence, we realise that although 5,000 people saw the so-called miracle of the loaves and fishes, perhaps only a small percentage could see anything taking place other than the most orderly passing out of bread and fishes. It was not possible for them to see anything different. No more than a man looking through rose-coloured specs can actually see a horse white. The horse, no matter what its true colour, will appear eternally pink. So the most glorious revelation viewed through the foreshortened sense of sight would have to conform to that sense. Through the glass darkly, through the beliefs and thoughts that you have accepted as real and true. Darker or lighter, according to your ability to perceive the reality of existence. If thine eye be single, thy whole body is full of light, seems to give us an entering wedge to this new dimension. The whole body being full of light posits the fact that all of the senses of the body would be freed into their new field of activity. Undoubtedly, Jesus saw, literally as well as symbolically, the kingdom of heaven here and now, because he saw it in his own consciousness. Look not low, here nor there, for the kingdom of heaven is within you. It is marvellous to contemplate what the slight change in the mental elevation may suddenly do for you. If you are still working with a dual world, still working against evil, still finding evil as a reality which you are especially appointed to destroy, your whole body cannot be full of light and your eye cannot be single. The coming of the power to fulfill, not to destroy, will teach you much, and the awareness of the presence, even in hell, where you may have made your bed, will cause you to understand that Jesus was not in the business of fighting a supposed thing called evil. He constantly recognized the presence and the manifestation of evil which in its final analysis is a belief that a place exists apart from the presence, is filled full or discovered to be already full of the presence. Even the wrath of man shall bless you is just another way of seeing with the single eye the presence. It is so different from trying to force the presence into the evil situation. Gradually, as you begin this calling on me in the midst of every picture of so-called evil, you will understand the lack of sympathy in Jesus and his deep sense of compassion. The old prophet putting his hand in his bosom and bringing it out white with leprosy and then restoring it to normal health by doing the same thing should open the eyes of the blind who believe that disease is even a belief which has to be destroyed. It is not in any sense of the word handled. The awareness of the presence is all that is necessary. Call upon me and I will answer you. Do you believe that? Answer me. Do you believe that the calling upon this me will bring about the manifestation? You will when the dual standard of life passes away and you find that I came not to destroy but to fulfill. That the senses are extending into the real existence, which pushes out the walls of the narrow concept of life in which you have existed all these years. When this extended vision begins to be a reality to you and you have stopped looking on an evil situation as something outside of God, then you will be able to look upon disease and produce ease, and upon poverty and produce wealth, and upon unhappiness and produce happiness. Your gaze extended into the reality of being will not be concerned with the shells which drop from the eagle, preening its wings for its divine destiny. It is wonderful that the old idea of turning the eyes away from what we called pictures of evil gives place to the divine glance which, to the three-dimensional mind, appears to heal. Healing by the glance. What a fantasy to the old human intellect. What a fantasy everything godlike is to the old human foreshortened senses. And yet it is amusing at least to see that the most hardened atheist, as he is gasping his last breath, usually calls on the God power. No man shall see my face and live. The moment you begin to see this finished mystery, you die 1,000 deaths. One belief after another passes away, and with them the landmarks and the memory of them finally pass out too. If you see the presence with the single eye, you see it. And no matter what the appearance is, your vision is extended just a little beyond the mystification of human beliefs. The prophet and his servant, you and your body, had come along many a highway of life when, all of a sudden, the servant discovered that the way of life was infested with 1,001 beliefs, armed to the teeth and outpictured as an army of horsemen and chariots. Deaths, impossible situations, disease, fears. All of these things have come and blocked the only way. And the servant is afraid, even as you and I. Look, the terror-filled voice of the one judging from the foreshortened senses. By every reason of man, he has a right to be afraid. Look again, the prophet is speaking. And the sense reaches out into the state of look again. And now the mountains round about are filled with chariots and horsemen. Those that are for us are more than those that are against us. And so the revelation of the presence takes place through 1,000 parables and stories. When you recognize the presence in any place and stop trying to handle the mystifications of belief, you suddenly find the sight extended to the point of look again, and find there the God and heaven rising into expression out of the hell of human beliefs. There's a skill saw going in the background, so if you can hear that, then action is taking place. Back to the chapter. We are gradually coming into alignment with the oneness of life and can faintly understand how this understanding causes everything to fall into perfect agreement with everything else. I am of too pure eyes to behold iniquity is not a moralistic statement of a tribal Jehovah. It is the actual uttering of that pure, unsullied state of consciousness wherein no evil exists. Recalling very definitely to mind that your problem is no problem to another, and likewise another's problem is nothing to you, you will begin to understand what it means to move into the place where the single vision exists. When thine eye is single, thy whole body also is full of light. When you begin to see the oneness of life and stop judging from appearances, you will find that you are not concerned with effects. They will automatically take care of themselves. Those still working with demonstrating the power are more concerned with the manifestation than the power. The rebuke is always the same. Ye seek me for the loaves and fishes, and not because of the miracle. When you begin to understand, even in a little way, this single eye doctrine of Jesus, you will understand how it is that the manifestation flows constantly into place without any outside aid or assistance. Remaining on the point of power, magnifying the Lord within, merging into this oneness of mind, suddenly frees you from a host of beliefs and reveals to you that the harvest is ripe. The getting and demonstrating ceases at this point, yet in reality it only begins. The oneness of it all causes you to see that Jesus became the giver, and in giving he placed himself in such a position as to receive all. As it passed through him into expression, there was nothing lacking in his life. Do you begin to understand the outpouring of the substance and how it sidesteps all of the laws of man? It is recorded that Jesus raised his eyes to heaven, and quite naturally most religious pictures portray him standing, gazing into the skies. But Jesus explained that heaven was not a locality, but a point in consciousness. It is the place of recognition of the presence, a point of awareness. Man can only know God in his own consciousness. Certainly he cannot know him outside of his consciousness. He must meet him in his own consciousness, and until he does, he cannot perceive him in the hell of human belief, which has emanated through the wisdom of man. When once man recognizes God in his consciousness, he can then see him everywhere and in every situation. He does not have to bring him from afar. He can call upon me and I will answer him. It is wonderful, the light that rushes in as your sight moves towards the single standpoint, as you begin to leave the old battlefields of belief and come out into the place of, if I be lifted up, I will draw all manifestation unto me. It is wonderful that this being lifted up comes through the recognition of the presence here, there, and everywhere. The drawing of all things unto you is quite a different thing from the demonstrating them of old. One quite naturally takes place and brings with it no surprise or emotion. The other is as much surprised when the demonstration is actually made as if he did not expect it. Awake, thou that sleepest, and Christ shall give thee light. Do you hear? Are your ears beginning to be unstopped? Are the scales beginning to fall from your eyes? Then shall the blind receive their sight. It is wonderful to contemplate this oneness of life, for it carries with it the possibility of all the dreams of yore. The picture shown to you on the mount cannot be seen through the glass darkly of human belief, because these beliefs have never even dreamed of anything so beautiful and glorious. So, steeped in the fearsome laws of life, work out your own salvation. As for man, his days are few and full of trouble. Earn your living by the sweat of your brow. When I would do good, I do evil. How can man see through this dense fog the picture shown to him on the mount? It is too good to be true, and it is not true if squared by the findings of the human senses. But the promise stands. Thine eyes shall see the King in all his beauty. That promise that you shall see your soul in all its beauty is enough to carry any man on into the place of awareness. Are you curious about the things that have been prepared for you and the things that have not been able to enter into the heart of man? Only through the extended senses is it possible of attainment. If you cannot see God in the devil who is disrupting your life, God in the disease, God in the thing lying in the gutter, you cannot find him in the temple, for he is all or nothing. Choose you this day whom ye will serve. And the choice is up to the individual. It has nothing whatsoever to do with the opinions and beliefs of another. The coal of fire is placed upon the lips of the initiated. He has ceased from talking it over with another. He knows and will let the light shine, but he does not try to make it shine. By their works, not by their words, ye shall know them. You have the yardstick always at hand. Ye shall see him as he is when the eye becomes single, and that will satisfy you. When you even glimpse him, this oneness, you will have answered the question, is this he that should come, or look we for another? If you are still asking this question, you are still expecting another Messiah, and another will come, and another will be found to have clay feet, because you will finally have to find him within. Digging out the clay feet of messiahs is the pastime of metaphysicians, not knowing that at each digging they are only showing forth their own lives and disbelief in the one power. Spending time seeking into the personal lives of speakers and lecturers suffices for understanding of the Christ to many. Follow me. Follow me. Do you hear? Yes, it is true. The fields are white with harvest and the labourers are few, because they have the double eye of lack and substance and coming and going of the presence, which is only possible to the wisdom of man. When Jesus said, "Look again," it was an extension of the sense of sight into vision, where the presence was recognised as a manifested thing. The looking again, the divine glance that heals, does nothing but become aware of the presence, and the flames of the hell of belief subside. Hence the healing glance, the looking past the glass darkly unto the presence which shatters the belief manifested in death or disease. Thrust in the sickle becomes a present possibility as soon as the eye becomes single and the greediness has subsided into the recognition of the presence. Yet in my flesh shall I see God. It is wonderful. The universe in which you live is a mirror of your consciousness. It can only reflect what you discover within. It can only respond to you. It can only answer to your conscious word, be it good, bad, or indifferent. And that is the end of chapter 9, the extension of the senses. See you.